the Strength of America podcast.
All right, welcome to the 7th episode of this SOA podcast. Appreciate you guys being out here. We want to talk a little bit today about kind of expanding what we did last week on recovery. And one of that is about foam rolling because there's a lot of misinformation out there. At the same time, they're learning it's a good thing to do. However, they're doing it wrong or doing too much or not enough. I want to talk about some of the different ways of doing it as well. Before we get too much into it, no, we didn't get any new cool earrings. We're trying out something to help with our audio as we're getting different things with some of the different rooms and all, that the sound is different. So we're trying out the new Apple AirPods to kind of see how they work on as far as microphones for us so that we can actually talk, and we'll see how the voice picks up. So let us know about that as well so we get the right sound for you so it's not annoying any more than Bobby's. All right. So foam rolling, one of the big things. What are some of the misconceptions out there about foam rolling?
I think there's people understanding how to use them and what they're for. Some people kind of aimlessly roll. Sometimes they'll go over areas of bone or different things. First of all, you got to know it's kind of like a massage. You want to make sure you're using it on muscle groups. You got to know that there are various tools you could use for different areas. Bigger muscle groups, you can use a bigger foam roller, kind of like this right here. And we usually get the big ones and we chop it up so it's a little bit smaller, easier to use, and you have more for more athletes and people. So a little tip there. But outside of that, knowing that this is probably going to be a better spot for quads, upper back, side, hamstrings, things like that. But when you get to glute areas, it can be good. But something that could be better is maybe like a softball or a smaller med ball, or maybe it's a concentrated smaller area in the front or the hip, and maybe you want to go to a lacrosse ball or something like that. So I think it's just kind of knowing what tools are there and knowing when they could be used. There's also a stick, a roller stick. A lot of times we like to use it before training, help with some circulation, get the tissue a little loosened up, warmed up, and different things like that. But if we're looking to really open up, loosen up the tissue, kind of like a deep tissue massage, and we're probably not going to go for that. We're probably going to go to a foam roller because we can lay our body weight on it. We get more pressure on that to help kind of open up or loosen up, however you want to word it or phrase it.
And there's a progression into it as well, like anything else. One of the things we really want to take a look at is some of them will come into it and think, okay, I get this foam roller, but look at the foam rollers. You got some have knobs. You got all these things going into it. Well, with some of them, if they have such strong spasms, with those so tight in the lats and trying to get into it, and they're digging so hard, it's causing muscles to contract even more, then lying on the floor isn't the best thing to do, lying on top of that with a hard lacrosse ball. So maybe just having it up against the wall and putting that foam roller in, so that arm's up, he's leaning up against that, and you're just against the wall, and he puts whatever resistance he needs to, kind of squatting down, coming back up and down. He can get just enough to start with. But again, if it's contracting so hard and it's digging and hurting, well, they're arching, they're causing spasms somewhere else. That's a problem. So work with it, start with this. Generally, these basic black ones that we get, workouts.com and some different places we go out there, are terrific. That's all you really need to have. And then on different surfaces, I've got some of the seniors I've worked with, they can do some of these or use a tennis ball, but I'll have them actually start on a bed where it has some give to it, so it's not digging quite so hard into it. When that gets easier, then yes, onto the floor or pull something more harder surface from a tennis ball to a lacrosse ball. But trying to find those different things to do. The other things they look at is really what you're trying to accomplish and what they're setting up. And one of the things we don't want to do is really do a lot of low back work with this, because think about what they're really trying to accomplish is, if they're flat on the floor and they're digging in here, you've got that entire rib cage thing set up that you can brace it against. The scapula, the shoulder blades, you're working angles pulling into it. But you get here into the lumbar, that low back, below the rib cage and above the hip. There's really nothing but your spine there. And now as he's digging into it on the floor, what's he doing? Some of them already have excessive curve. Now they're leaning even more into it, that spinal process digging into it. And again, if they don't know why or what the problem is in there, the last thing we want to do is extend that back even more and cause potential problems with the nerves off of that side. So hitting smaller areas into that in the low back, hitting sides at a softer area, that's fine. But almost we're better off doing some of our stretch, mobility exercise and things to loosen up the back. But almost always, it's not that the low back is weak, because that's where we tend to think a lot with the strength training. We've just got so many imbalances of our glutes, our hips, abdomen, our quads, the things going into it. So much stress, but they feel it in the back. That's kind of the weak link. There's so much stress. There's only so long it can happen. And as one of my anatomy teachers years ago at Nebraska was talking about, said, really think of the hip like a steering wheel. You look at a side view pulling out. You've got the abdomen contracting, pulling into it. You've got the low back, the lumbar muscles. You've got the glutes coming off the back end, the hip flexors and quads, everything pulling. Well, that weak area, the other side are compensating, trying to balance and pull. And if the weak area is not strong enough to pull into it, what happens? Well, it just shifts and pulls into it. We get that excessive curve in the back. So there has to be a balance in everything that you're doing. So the foam rolling thing is great. And we're actually going to put, Bobby talk a little bit more about, some of these things or what he suggests and what he sees in the weight room with the kids and whether he uses it before their workout to get warmed up, they use it afterwards, post stuff. But I want you to check out the Instagram and our new YouTube page as well. I'll have the link below as well. That we're not only going to have our podcast set up on the YouTube page, but I'm going to set categories aside as well. So in between on the Instagram and stuff, you can actually see some of the foam rolling and some of the examples that we're putting into it as well. So make sure you get to that as well. So when do you see or kind of recommend for your athletes using the roller? When do you put it into play?
A lot of time it's on their own time. I don't structure a lot of specific time for that because I think it's going to accountability and taking care of your body and you and knowing, hey, maybe I'm really tight here, so I'm going to specifically do where I'm tight. I may be tight where someone else may not be. So that's where a lot of individualization comes through and having to know your body a little bit. But I try to get them to come in earlier, take their time out in the hall. That way they group with their team or whoever they're with. But a lot of it's just scheduling. Sometimes it's hard for us to do. You only have so much time. So I try to get them, if they're going to do it, spend about 5 minutes or so before training. That way at least I know that if we're going into a session and they're all bound up from sitting all day or waking up in the morning from sleeping and real tight, we can kind of get some of the problem areas like hips and T-spine, more of our postural areas like that, kind of a little more looser and open up so they feel better, so they don't feel so just tight and constricted. Because if they're coming in rounded over a little bit, hips are sunk forward, kind of like he's talking about the driving wheel or like a bucket of water tilting forward, and we're super tight, we're obviously not going to have very good movement. So throw it in at the beginning. There's controversy whether it works, doesn't work. We have a lot of kids that really enjoy it and like it. So they think it works. We felt like it helps loosen us up and feel like we can move a little bit better, so we use it. But a lot of it's before. I'd say if you had all the time in the world, do a little bit before. Whatever you work that day, let's say you're in the weight room, maybe you did a lot of legs, maybe just do specifically some quads, hamstrings, glutes, and stuff like that. That way you know what you're hitting. You're loosening up a little bit so you don't feel so bound up and tightened up. But we'll have a lot of kids do it. Game days. Maybe a lot of it's just a prep thing up here. They're starting to get their body ready, their mind ready, and stuff like that. But they like the feeling of feeling a little bit more looser and ready rather than tight and constricted. So, but yeah, good tool. We have a lot of kids, like he was talking about, no progressions and stuff using the lacrosse balls. We got a lot of overhead athletes that are super tight or kids that are real tight, bound up. We'll have them go right to a wall with a lacrosse ball or something, and they can adjust the pressure. Then if they really need to dig something out, once they got the tissue warmed up, when they're up against the wall lightly and then digging in more and more, then they can go down to the ground. But I'd say the hardest thing is going to, like, if you've ever rolled your quads before, not a lot of athletes like go into that right away because it hurts. So if it hurts, you probably need to spend more time there first of all. But if it hurts real bad, you're probably not going to do it, honestly. So going to something where you can adjust it, or maybe you take a stick to your quads first sitting down and then you hop to the ground once you're a little more warmed up. Definitely makes the process a lot easier. You're probably going to do more work on it, more quality work than just kind of rushing through it and getting done with it. But
and that's like when they're rolling too. One of the things we don't want to see is they'll get on the first time and they start rolling up and down, just kind of go through. Circulation, all that, fine. You can move and get the circulation. If you're trying to really get through, you'll find some troubled spots that are tender. So putting a little pressure, kind of hanging there a good 5 to 10 seconds, going to find that and working, expanding from that point. But just rolling up and down and going, it's like somebody coming by and giving you a back rub. Same thing.
Feels good, but
so, and that's okay. It's nice. It's time of year, give a little back rub, nice job. But we want to really get in. If you're going to do it, don't waste the time and dig into it. So that's where we're going to find that. So make sure you look at it. This is going to come out on Saturday morning, the 23rd. So that week, make sure you look and check the pages, and we'll have those on the Facebook page. We'll have alerts that's going out. The YouTube page, if you're already subscribed to that, as soon as we post those, it'll come to you automatically as well. iTunes, any of those. So the links will be there. But please keep doing what you're doing and sharing and keeping that up. It's been great. Starting to get good feedback and questions from people. Like I said, the hearing, let us know what you think on how that looks. But hopefully the audio didn't distract from anything. Well, hopefully the audio picked up a little better with the mic, but we'll find out what's going on with that. And yes, the other part I want you to do is we get questions about the podcast shirts, and we're hoping to put it in order after the first of the year. So just let us know what you're doing. We'll have a link and put some things as well, or just question about it. But that, again, is a big help to us to help get our teams and everybody understanding more about how to protect themselves, how to cut corners, but quit wasting time training. If we're actually training, speed training, it's not about running around and throwing up, but specific movements on changing direction or multiple directional speed, building more power. Let's not waste time. These kids are putting so much time and effort into their practice, their schoolwork, family. Hard to get that family time sometimes. So we want to make sure they're getting the most out of their time going into it. And the next podcast, we're actually going to announce during that week, the first week of the year, who is getting our first free 2-hour clinic that we're going to host later in January as well. So thanks for tagging and putting stuff into that. So anything else you got for them? We're good to go.
Pretty good.
You guys have a great Christmas. Enjoy your holidays with the family. Keep getting that protein in there. And we'll see you next year.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.